Fast forward to just a week later where Diddy said, do what you got to do. Cassie said, well, let's just talk tomorrow. Diddy said, I don't want a combo where you break up with me again. Cassie said, I do love you. I don't want to I don't want to be your girlfriend anymore. Then we kind of get into Alex Fine a little bit, her now husband. And so around this time, this also being in September of 2018, that Diddy found out that Cassie was seeing Alex Fine when the two being Cassie and Diddy were intimate together, because I guess Alex Fine had called Cassie around this time. And it's pretty important to understand a little bit of why Diddy was possibly upset, because around this time Alex Fine was a personal trainer. Diddy actually hired Alex Fine to train Cassie, so that's just another point that the defense always kind of tries to make there.
Zeroing in on a series of text messages between Ventura and Combs, trying to cast doubt on her claims that she was coerced into so-called freak-off. Combs denied all allegations against him, and his attorneys are now trying to portray Ventura as a willing participant in what they describe as his swingers lifestyle. One message from Ventura reads, "I'm always ready to freak off." In another, she writes, "The freak-offs felt right."
Statement that Cassie just prepared, as well as her husband. They're two separate statements. I'll read Cassie's first. This week has been extremely challenging, but also remarkably empowering and healing for me. I hope that my testimony has given strength.
Because what they're trying to do is bring out that she's not a perfect person, that they're saying she might have wanted to engage in these freak-offs on more than one occasion, that she was willingly staying in this relationship with Sean Combs, even though she knew that it was an abusive one. They're bringing out things that she said to other people that are less than flattering. All that being said, the government doesn't need to have a perfect victim. What the government has done this week essentially is establishing the sex trafficking crimes that they've charged Sean Combs with. And I would argue...
All right, what's up with the YouTube family? Back again with another video on this whole Diddy situation. Y'all been asking me for the updates. I'm gonna bring them to y'all here and there. Even though this is not my type of content, it don't get a lot of views on my channel and things like that. It is something that y'all are asking for, so I'm gonna do that. So if you're a supporter of the channel, make sure y'all hit that like button, staying engaged with the channel. Leave a comment here and there if you choose to. If you want to stay locked in with me, just do that. And yeah, man, you know, we're gonna go ahead and keep on talking about this, but I got other videos dropping outside of this. Hey, we've been covering this all week. So today was the last day of Cassie's testimony, testifying, whatever the case may be, and a lot of things came out today, like a lot of different shit. They found out that she was texting Diddy after she was married to this dude, after she got married to old boy Alex Fine, I think that's how you pronounce his name here, her husband here. After she got married, she still was texting him saying certain things. They also said that she FaceTimed him, her husband now, while she was having intercourse with Diddy, which is some crazy kinky shit to me in my personal opinion, but we don't know the context around what took place with it. I'm trying to find one of these text messages that I can read to y'all. But yeah, man, you know, they also was stating that Cassie is getting ready to have her baby very, very soon, and they just really wanted to wrap this up. They were trying to extend it until Monday, as some of y'all already heard her, you know, being cross-examined and things like that, and they wasn't having that shit. They ready to get this over with. A lot of things have been repetitive, but she have been coming out with new evidence. Well, I can't say evidence because we really just don't know. She be coming out with new testimonies about the whole situation. But let me see, I read one of them things a while ago. Let me see. Okay, yeah, so after they got married, she put in one of the messages, P. Diddy said, "Ride or die always," and one of the greatest women in the world. Cassie replied that the messages blew my mind a bit and told him, "I don't hate you, I never have." So she also stated that, what she say? She said, "I wouldn't be at this beautiful point in my life if I hadn't been with you." Now that can be taken so many different ways, because she can be saying that she done found a different level of peace and happiness after dealing with him too, you know. But like I was saying in the other video, they are trying to establish her own independency, basically just letting it be known that she could function without him. She did her own thing. She did her own little freak offs with other people without him. So many different things that's trying to let you know that he wasn't the orchestrator of everything that was going on with her. No matter how you twist it and turn it, the public's perception is going to continue to believe that. You feel me? So yeah, but the husband gave a statement today after everything, and Cassie did too. Their lawyer is the one who spoke for them, and he said they will not be making any more statements after today. Hell, I wouldn't either. I done got paid good, handsomely. They also said that the Intercontinental paid them, well, not them, Cassie, $10 million. Now, the thing behind that is they paid her the $10 million basically because she was being recorded, getting jumped on in some type of way. It wasn't reported and different things like that. So I guess for her to settle out with them, she wasn't going to go ahead and just release all of the information that she knew. So they just went ahead and paid her, which is, hey, touche. If they want to be funny acting and janky and shit, I can understand you doing that, you know. But I do want to say this whole situation is just getting started. A lot of people feel like it's over with now since Cassie is done. No, it's a new witness up there today that's Cassie's friend, basically saying that, you know, she's seen a lot of different stuff take place too. And it's going to be a lot of people testifying against Diddy, bro. Real talk. It's just simple as that. But yes, they said that, you know, she has mental health issues. They said a lot of different stuff about her, but ultimately the damage has been done. She has said enough to impact this whole case to the maximum extent. You feel me? But those text messages that they released yesterday and today, boy, they was into some shit. And for her to say that she, you know, was always down and ready to do this and ready to do that, you know, it really makes people believe that she was a willing participant. I have seen so many different people change their mind, change their perception on everything the more that she talked. Which is understandable because, you know, a lot of the times we'll just go off of one side of a story without knowing every single thing and then get our own, you know, little scenario made up in our mind about it. But then when you hear the other side of it and start putting two and two together, you start getting another, you know, perspective of things. Me personally, I'm not here to speak on my personal thoughts on the situation. I just want to say, you know, it just sad and unfortunate that everything played out the way that it did between them two, if they genuinely had a love for each other. All them freak offs and all that shit, man. People got their own kinks and stuff like that. So I'm definitely not finna, you know, look down on people for wanting to get peed on, peeing, and just, but it's just now, it's a level of that type of shit, though, that I think it's a little too damn much. But, you know, people just do what they want to do. And if you know me, you know I don't give a damn about nothing nobody got going on in their personal life. I really hated that it came out like this, you know what I'm saying? I hate when anybody come out with anything, but y'all better believe if you come out with it, we're going to talk about it, we're going to listen to it and everything, so it is what it is. But let's hear the lawyer's statement from Cassie and her husband, and I want to know your thoughts and opinions on everything, and I got a little bit more of, you know, coverage on it at the end of this video too as well. Let's get into it though.
It's hard to put into words how honored I have been to represent Cassie Ventura. Since we filed her civil complaint in November of 2023, she has shown such great courage and bravery for stepping forward. And she has now testified throughout this entire week. She's done so under the most difficult of circumstances, just about to give birth to her third child, and under some very difficult circumstances because of the subject matter of what she testified to. Putting that aside, she was able to do so poignantly. She was able to do so graciously, and it's a real testament to who she is and the support that she has. I have a statement from her, and I also have a statement from her husband, which I'll read in a moment. But before I do, there's a few people I want to thank. Most importantly, I want to thank my partner Meredith, who's here, as well as the other attorneys who worked on the case at our firm, including Kat Bask, who's also here. And I also want to thank, of course, the excellent attorneys in the U.S. Attorney's Office who have really been great lawyers, but also just great people who have made Cassie feel comfortable in the process. Would also like to thank the court staff who have made our appearance this week easy, the Department of Homeland Security, the marshals. And with that, I'd just like to read a statement that Cassie just prepared, as well as her husband. They're two separate statements. I'll read Cassie's first. This week has been extremely challenging, but also remarkably empowering and healing for me. I hope that my testimony has given strength and a voice to other survivors and can help others who have suffered to speak up and also heal from abuse and fear. For me, the more I heal, the more I can remember. And the more I can remember, the more I will never forget. I want to thank my family and my advocates for their unwavering support, and I'm grateful for all the kindness and encouragement that I have received. I am glad to put this chapter of my life to rest. As I turn to focus on the conclusion of my pregnancy, I ask for privacy for me and for my growing family. And then I have a statement from Alex Fine. Over the past 5 days, the world has gotten to witness the strength and bravery of my wife, freeing herself of her past. There has been speculation online surrounding how it must feel for me to sit there and listen to my wife's testimony.
Yes, Lord.
I have felt so many things sitting there. I have felt tremendous pride and overwhelming love for Cass. I have felt profound anger that she has been subjected to sitting in front of a person who tried to break her. So, to him and all of those who helped him along the way, please know this: you did not. You did not break her spirit nor her smile that lights up every room. You did not break the souls of a mother who gives the best hugs and plays the silliest games with our little girls. You did not break the woman who has made me a better man. I did not save Cassie, as some have said. To say that is an insult to the years of painful work my wife has done to save herself. Cassie saved Cassie. She alone broke free from abuse, coercion, violence, and threats. She did the work of fighting the demons that only a demon himself could have done to her. All I have done is love her as she has loved me. Her life is now surrounded by love, laughter, and our family. This horrific chapter is forever put behind us, and we will not be making additional statements. We appreciate all of the love and support we have received, and we ask that you respect our privacy as we welcome our son into a world that is now safer because of his mom. Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate the media's
Hey, look. Now, I know damn well he's happy that he got the chance to represent her, because I heard, now I don't know how true this is, but I did see something saying that he receives like 33% of what they're getting. And that's a lot of damn money. You know, that's down there 50%. But ultimately, you know, and I really don't even feel like you need a lawyer for no shit like that, honestly. You feel me? Because the only thing that you're doing is giving your testimony, but that does make things look, it makes things look more, you know, legit, more aggressive. You feel where I'm coming from? But ultimately, you know, the things that they've been doing and what they've been through, she may have been a willing participant, but I think a lot of this shit, you know, really does come from her just trying to please him. You know what I'm saying? Now, like I said, I'm not trying to make it seem like she's 100% innocent, because we all know that she wasn't. She also made some damn phone calls to one of them damn strippers, one of them escorts, threatening him about, you know, what he was doing in that room. I feel like he's going to try to sue her ass after that. But he is basically being accused of recording her. You know what I'm saying? That she threatened him, saying she was going to get his life taken, and it ain't going to be by her hand, she'll get it done, and different things like that. So people were saying in the comment sections today, saying she's not a damn victim, she's a co-defendant for coming the way that she was coming. But ultimately, you know, I'm not here to say anything about that, if it's true or not. I'm just saying what was said on the internet today. But yeah, she did make those threats. She did admit to that, and that's some crazy shit coming from a woman. You know what I'm saying? Popping it like this, saying she gonna put a hit out on you and shit. But it ain't, you know, impossible. But it is what it is. Let's get back into this video right here. This is another video just kind of summing up a lot of different things. I haven't watched either one of these videos, but you know, I just want to say, if you're out here dealing with a situation that you really don't want to be involved in, and you are away from this person, do not stick around. Go turn their ass in, or do your best to stay the hell away. Make your report, but you can say you don't want to press charges and shit like that, but just let it be known that you know, you're trying to get the hell away from these situations. Ain't no love in a situation where you're doing shit that you don't want to do. It just ain't. Nah, hell nah. It ain't no love in that shit. If a person is letting it be known that they don't want to do certain shit, which I'm pretty sure she was saying certain things like that, insinuating anyway. You know what I'm saying? And certain things still go through. There's no love in that situation. Let's get back into the video though.
That we're following in Sean Diddy Combs' racketeering and sex trafficking trial. In just moments, Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, is set to retake the stand and face what we expect to be her final round of questioning under cross-examination. Court currently is on a short lunch break, but if you recall, the judge previously said that he wanted Ventura's cross-examination to wrap up before lunch today. Prosecutors have said that Ventura, who's nearly 9 months pregnant, could soon go into labor.
Over the last hour, the defense has been asking Ventura more about her 2018 rape allegation against Combs, Ventura's drug use, her mental health problems, and a 2014 threat that she made to a man who claimed he had seen a sexually explicit tape of her, also raised in court. The defense at one point asking Ventura, quote, "Do you still have love for him?" referring to Combs, and Ventura answered by saying, quote, "I have love for the past and what it was." Let's bring in court TV anchor and former prosecutor Julie Grant right now. Okay, Julie, what do you think of what
you know what?
have?
I'm gonna say this, and I want to know your thoughts and opinions on this. I ain't here to debate with you. I'm just asking you. I feel like that she really didn't want to say half of the shit that she said today or this week. I think since she had to go ahead and press play on this whole situation to get her money, she just came back out of it because she already done said certain things. You don't want to mess up your credibility when you got so many different people riding for you. So yeah, she gonna stand up in the paint when it comes to that situation. I think Diddy will still forgive her ass and take her back too. You know what I'm saying? That's my personal opinion. I want to know the outfit the same way. But there's some shit in the game when it comes to this right here. I don't really feel like she just really wanted to testify. You know what I'm saying? Not just for the simple fact of her being nervous to face him or no shit like that. I think that she just didn't want it to go that far. But he was the one who was trying to like keep the money from her. She just wanted to get paid and go on. He made it to the point where she had to do what she had to do to get what she wanted to get. He probably thought that he had some type of, you know, control over her to the point where she wasn't going to say anything, and she proved his ass wrong. Now look at him. He going through a whole bunch of shit, but let's get back into it.
Been reading about what the defense has brought up today.
Brianna and Boris, good afternoon to you both. The defense is right when they say that Cassie Ventura is the most critical witness to this case. The defense is doing its job because what they're trying to do is bring out that she's not a perfect person. That they're saying she might have wanted to engage in these freak-offs on more than one occasion, that she was willingly staying in this relationship with Sean Combs, even though she knew that it was an abusive one. They're bringing out things that she said to other people that are less than flattering.
Oh, yeah.
The government doesn't need to have a perfect victim. What the government has done this week essentially is establishing the sex trafficking crimes that they've charged Sean Combs with. And I would argue that they are well on their way to proving these crimes. A lot of people don't realize that with sex trafficking, you don't have to have movement anywhere. You don't have to go across state lines. A lot of times people confuse it with human smuggling. Here, somebody can be trafficked in their own home. All you really need is someone providing somebody else for that commercial sex act. And when I say commercial, I mean anything of value, not even necessarily money, to be given by force or coercion. And so Cassie Ventura has done her job this week for the government, and now the defense is doing its job to try to make it seem as if she wanted to be in this relationship and that what happened in those freak-offs was not coerced.
Julie, the government, or rather the defense, asking her about mental health treatment that she received, this therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder. Why would they go with that line of questioning? How does that benefit their defense of Combs?
Great question, Boris, because it could go to her credibility and her memory's reliability. And so here they're trying to paint her out as somebody who may not be remembering all the details as they actually occurred. Maybe somebody whose memory isn't all that great. They want the jury to think, well, maybe she's somewhat of a basket case after all of this, and maybe what she's telling us we can't rely on because maybe it's not exactly true. So by them wanting to go through the therapy she's been through, there was a mention of EMDR that deals with eye movements and recalling memories. They're going through all of that to try to make it seem as if, okay, maybe Cassie Ventura isn't emotionally stable. Maybe her mental recollection isn't quite right. And then we can argue later to the jury in closing arguments that they can't rely on that. So that's exactly what the defense is trying to get at with those lines of questioning, Boris.
I wonder what you think, and also how the prosecution is going to have to respond to that. We should be clear, this particular type of therapy is considered a leading therapy for veterans processing PTSD. I remember talking to a Virginia Tech survivor. School shooting survivors use this very successfully. And Cassie Ventura testified it helps recount memories and process them. She said that if there was a time when you were getting beat up in a room and couldn't walk out, you would reimagine it in a way that you were actually able to leave the room. Do you see this potentially backfiring on the defense?
Oh, Brianna, you took the words right out of my mouth. Yes, you are exactly right. The defense needs to be really careful what they're doing here because she is a victim. She is a victim. She has put herself out there and saying that she survived these horrific instances of rape, of other assaultive behaviors, some of which we've seen evidence of on that videotape that CNN exclusively obtained and then broadcast, and thank goodness for that. And so with the defense trying to go down this road, trying to attack her therapy, the government's going to get right back up there and say, well, the only reason she needed to go to therapy and seek EMDR and the other types of therapy was because of the actions of your client, Combs' attorney team. So they're going to go right back at it and say that had she not been so brutally traumatized, she wouldn't have had to seek therapy, and that's a good thing. And certainly anybody on that jury who's ever been to therapy or knows anything about it, they're going to be thinking about how Cassie Ventura could be being traumatized right now, again, in having to relive all of the various questioning for days from both sides. So you're right, Brianna. This is a slippery slope that the defense team is on right now with her.
But consensual relationship between the two. Ventura testified that Combs beat her and coerced her into having sex with male escorts, sometimes on camera. But Combs' attorneys are pushing back, arguing that Ventura wanted to participate and enjoyed them. According to court transcripts obtained by Law and Crime, in a 2009 exchange nearly 2 years into their relationship, Combs texted, "I miss you already." Ventura replied, "Me too." Combs then asked, "When do you want to freak off? LOL." Ventura answered, "LOL, I am just going up to change and put my ring in. I just picked it up. I'm always ready to freak off. LOL." Combs wrote, "You tell me the day, you choose." Ventura responded, "It can be whenever." He answered, "Name the night." 4 years later, in 2013, Ventura messaged Combs saying, "Wish we could have FO'd before you left," using the initials for freak off. And in 2017, she texted him again saying she, quote, loved their freak offs. In another exchange, Combs wrote, "I want a freak off right now, LOL." Ventura replied, "LOL, me too. Well, I want to have fun with you." Having Ventura read those messages out loud in court was most likely strategic. It's a key moment for the defense as they work to undermine her claims of coercion, because in this case, it all comes down to consent. For the jury to convict Combs on charges of sex trafficking and racketeering, they must believe force and coercion were involved. The defense also arguing that if Ms. Ventura was ever hesitant to participate, it wasn't because she was forced, but because she was jealous and wanted more out of the relationship. The attorney asked, "You testified on direct that you were insanely jealous, right?" Ventura responded, "I did say that, yeah." The attorney asked, "And you reacted when you saw social media posts of Mr. Combs with other women, right?" Ventura responded, "Yeah." Combs' attorney also brought up Ventura's past comments about Diddy's longtime partner, Kim Porter, who is the mother of 3 of his children. Ventura admitted that she used to resent Diddy spending holidays with his family and Porter instead of her. Ventura wrote to Combs, "I understand you feeling like you need to protect your children, but after a while, for what? It's like, for what? They've never known you and Kim to be together, unless there's something that I just don't know about. They were babies when we started dating. If Chance can go away with her dad and not her mom, I think the other kids can too. The more time that goes by, the harder it is to understand." During the first week of trial, the defense also brought up Diddy's long history of drug abuse, trying to shift the narrative away from a man allegedly running a criminal operation and instead paint him as someone spiraling out of control from addiction. Ventura testified that Combs' addiction played a role in his mood swings, admitting that at one point he was hospitalized after overdosing. The defense asked, "So almost the entire duration of your relationship, you were both addicted to painkillers?" Ventura responded, "Very close to it, yeah." The attorney asked, "But periodically withdrawing and being affected by the withdrawal symptoms in your relationship, right?" Ventura responded, "Yep." The attorney asked, "And that was a big part of Mr. Combs' mood swings, right?" Ventura responded, "I don't know if it was a big part, but it was a part." The attorney asked, "You understood that if he did not get his painkillers that he was relying on, that it would affect his mood, right?" Ventura responds, "Yeah, anybody that's addicted to painkillers is like that." And joining me to talk more about this is federal trial attorney Alexis Rosenberg. Alexis, thank you so much for coming on today. Let's just jump right in. How do you think the defense did, questioning Cassie for hours and hours and hours?
So, I mean, it's very trying. What they had her testify obviously was very sensitive. They're having her read text messages. This is very personal, and coming from someone who had testified, before about what she was an abused woman and then having to relive that under the circumstances and the fact she's so pregnant, I think she did very well.
Prosecution, they were arguing that, and Cassie testified to this, that she was abused, that she was raped, that she was coerced essentially and did not want to participate in these freak offs. But after reading the text messages and that the defense brought up, it seemed like it was a different picture. They painted a different picture. How do you think the defense is doing to try to counter some of what Miss Ventura said during that testimony?
The defense is doing a really good job at chipping away at it. I think that the defense says that basically, Diddy did abuse her. We have the video. I don't think they're countering that. And he had a public apology, as we know. But he's saying that abusing someone, domestic violence, is not RICO. She wasn't coerced into it, and bringing out those different text messages where she was saying that she was asking and saying that she liked these freak offs does support that it was not, she wasn't coerced into doing it, that she actually enjoyed it. And the question is really, is the jury believing that? Because we do know battered woman syndrome, sometimes they do things that seem out of the ordinary and contra to what was really going on.
Right. And I was just about to ask that. Do you think that the jury is believing the defense, or do you think that they're taking the side of the prosecution? Because I feel like everyone is really leaning in to Cassie's every word the first couple of days when the prosecution was questioning her, listening to, her what she alleges is abuse, right? And then when they saw those text messages, and Ms. Ventura said things like, "Oh, I always want to freak off." She said something along those lines, or, "Oh, I wish I could freak off right now." And Mr. Combs is asking her when she wants to do it, and she's saying, "Whenever you want to." Just seeing those things, how do you think that they're taking it?
Well, we'll see ultimately how they take it. But remember, for coercion, you can be consenting and then change. You can change your position that you don't want to do that anymore. Number one. Number two, once we add drugs to the mix, that really does support coercion. If you are drugging someone, that supports the fact that they weren't consenting at the time to what they were doing. So they really need, the defense needs to chip away and really go towards that she was consenting. But the prosecution needs to hammer down that, yeah, at one point she may have been consenting, and she may, she changed, or that she was just saying this. And I'm assuming they're going to have an expert that's going to come testify about, the psychological aspects of being in this type of relationship. But she also said on the stand that she still has feelings for him, that it's not that she has a hatred towards him, even as she sits there today, which to me was extremely surprising, because what we heard when she was testifying for the prosecution, I think I would personally have extreme hatred for him based on that testimony.
Well, what do you think that means? I guess, like how you said, we're waiting to hear just from an expert that can really touch on the psychology of it all. But the fact that a person that she's claiming did do these things to her, right? Did allegedly rape her, did allegedly drug her, and to participate in these freak offs, and she doesn't hate them. What do you think that the expert will say to kind of combat that?
So I think it would support the fact that someone who has been battered does have that push me, pull me, that you have a situation where, listen, somebody doesn't stay in a battered relationship because it is bad all 100% of the time. There has been testimony that he can be very charming. He's a very charming person. It was like a switch. So there had to be some good times that were in those bad times. And it does seem to, the text messages do seem to support that as well. So I think that the testimony from the expert is going to say, yeah, there was this conflicted feeling, this conflicted relationship that was going on, and there was grooming that was done as well.
What do you think we can expect to happen next? I know the next witness that's supposed to take the stand is Dawn Richard, and she was in a former group that Diddy had made. What can we expect to hear from that?
I think we're going to expect to hear the same, similar of the same. I think each person is going to get up, the victims, and talk about the same pattern and how they were either drugged and coerced. And the prosecution does need to do that. They need to show this coercion, because right now with her, because this was a long relationship she was in with him. This was over a decade. That the question that the jury is probably asking is, why stay? Why did you keep coming back? So then if we show the next person, and that cumulative is going to get us to the jury most likely being able to see that there was coercion.
And I just want to touch back on what you just said about Cassie and Diddy being in a long relationship. I mean, it was 11 years. And the defense, they showed text messages from 2009, 2013 to 2017, really showing in each of these messages, showing her saying things that, she did enjoy the freak off.
Fast forward to just a week later where Diddy said, do what you got to do. Cassie said, well, let's just talk tomorrow. Diddy said, I don't want a combo where you break up with me again. Cassie said, I do love you. I don't want to I don't want to be your girlfriend anymore. Then we kind of get into Alex Fine a little bit, her now husband. And so around this time, this also being in September of 2018, that Diddy found out that Cassie was seeing Alex Fine when the two being Cassie and Diddy were intimate together, because I guess Alex Fine had called Cassie around this time. And it's pretty important to understand a little bit of why Diddy was possibly upset, because around this time, Alex Fine was a personal trainer. Diddy actually hired Alex Fine to train Cassie. So that's just another point that the defense always kind of tries to make there. After Cassie had told Diddy that she had a great night with him, the defense asked, if Alex found out about Diddy. And when the alleged rape was talked about, the defense asked, so did your husband punch a wall when you found this out? And Cassie said, the defense was kind of trying to say it as the rape had happened when Alex was calling. Cassie was kind of trying to clarify that that's not the time that this alleged rape had happened. But essentially the defense was like, when Alex had found out that this had happened to his now wife, that he was just so angry that he became violent and punched a wall during this moment. So I think if, Alex Spine is called as a as a defense witness, that this will definitely be a point that they'll talk about during his testimony if he does take the stand for the defense, because he might have to.
Yeah, it's tough to know about that if he's actually going to. That probably not. Yeah, what's interesting, Elizabeth? Apparently they were communicating, 2020? Like recently? 3 years before she filed the lawsuit against him? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, and according to Cassie, they still communicated after their breakup. So you see more messages, some from March of 2019, but the ones from March of 2020, they were still even communicating. This was the time around COVID. Not sure if maybe that kind of played a part into the two still communicating. But I think it's important to kind of note about here. During 2020, Cassie was already married to Alex Fine. She, I think at this point, was pregnant, maybe with their first child at this point. But Diddy had wrote to Cassie, again, this being in March of 2020, "Miss my best friend." Cassie responded, "Miss you too. Hope you're taking care of yourself." Diddy responded, again, always paraphrasing here, "Sending you nothing but love," but the text messages was a lot longer than that. Cassie responded, "Send my love to them being his children," because they were talking about his kids and how they're doing well and stuff like that. Diddy had wrote back to Cassie saying, "You are my ride or die. I thank God for the time that we had together." Again, the defense kind of trying to paint it out that there was love even as recently as just 2020 between the two. And it's interesting because I had noted in my notes, my many of notes, and I'm out on notebook 3 now, that Diddy kept looking at Cassie during this time. He wasn't kind of doing the overanalyzing of playing into his defense. He was kind of looking directly at Cassie. Maybe that was a soft spot for him. Not 100% sure. Obviously not in his mind or anything like that. Then Cassie responded a little later from the whole ride or die text, where Cassie said, "I took my time to gather my thoughts. The things you said blew my mind. I wouldn't be in this beautiful time without you." The beautiful time being, her family that she now has with her husband. And then they actually asked for a closure meeting around this time. Again, this being 2020. Then Diddy responded to Cassie saying, "Tears of joy. I'm happy you found someone. You deserve the world. You deserve to be loved and respected. Please let me know if you want to have a sit down and talk, and I'll make myself available." And even while Cassie was on the stand today, I think she was kind of insinuating that this is something that she had always wanted to hear. But then if you think about just these dates, Jesse, these were in 2020. Cassie said that around this time she was still kind of doing illegal drugs around this time up until 2022. Then she went to rehab in 2023. And then that's when, she was starting to kind of get these flashbacks and starting to kind of through her trauma therapy and stuff like that, still kind of reprocess everything that she had gone through. I mean, this is somebody that she was with for 11 years. This is somebody that she was with throughout all of her most of her adult life, I should say. And so I think, just putting everything into context, it kind of makes a little sense. Who doesn't break up with someone and then message them, a couple of years ago talking about the good times? Because that's sometimes things that people do. This is a normal reaction. And so for the most part, I think the defense was trying to point out that this essentially, that they ended with love, that Diddy even after still cared about Cassie. But for the most part, it seemed like, Cassie still, again, doesn't necessarily hate Diddy or necessarily possibly wish him harm or anything like that. But I think the defense was trying to just point out that there was still love between the two as recently as a couple years ago.
And that's something the defense is going to have to work with, right? And the jury might be saying, how could she not hate him? How could she stay in contact with him? How could she write messages like, "I'm so lost without you," when she's now saying that he sex trafficked her? And it's a very, very complicated analysis that is not going to be resolved with her testimony. I believe we're going to have a mental health expert to discuss this a little bit further as well. We saw flavors of this in other cases too, like Harvey Weinstein. But it's a lot for the defense to work with. That is clear, right? If the idea is to say that this was consensual, that's one hand, versus coercive on the other. Not easy for the jury to match it up here. But one of the things I was wondering whether or not the defense is going to work with this when she went to therapy or when she went to rehab, there was a discussion about memories. And would I be wrong to say the defense was trying to suggest that, and I've seen this before in other cases, that her memories were being manipulated? So in other words, the defense might make the argument, everything was consensual, yet when she goes to rehab and she gets therapy, her memories of her time with Sean Combs are being manipulated to make her feel like she's a victim of a crime or sex trafficking. Am I totally off with that?
No, not at all. I honestly thought, them talking about her rehab stint was, to me personally, just completely inappropriate. But to your point, Jesse, I could see possibly why they were trying to do that. They were essentially talking about how she was treated for neurofeedback. Her brain was hooked up to a bunch of wires to a machine to kind of regulate her brain and regulate her brain activity. She said this was something that while she was there for 45 days at Lilith Star, or Willow Star, I believe it's called, that she did this treatment about 5 or 6 times during her entire stay. So she said it was essentially about once a week, and she thought that the neurofeedback would essentially help her with her trauma. She also did this MDR treatment, another thing for trauma therapy, which helped her recount her memories. And again, to your point, Jesse, I do think that, a professional expert kind of talking about this and kind of explaining this to the jury about why people kind of do this. It's kind of new age even for myself that this type of machine is even possible. But, if you think about it, especially because we cover so many of these types of cases, right? Not just with the Diddy trial, but all across the U.S., sometimes outside of the U.S. too, that, we all know how sometimes it is, as far as victims go, there is delayed memory, there is delayed disclosure as far as disclosing some of the things that you went through, because when something traumatic happens, who doesn't try to block it out of their memory? Who doesn't try to, try to get their head out of it or not process it the way that it's processed? But it seems like through this time period that she was really just trying to better herself around this time. This was a time where, again, she's already married to Alex Fine. She already has children, but it seems like she was finally like, okay, I'm seeking treatment for myself. And then that this trauma therapy really kind of exploded everything into her recounting just maybe all the things that she had went through that she thought were okay at the time and then realized they weren't.
And then it became a question of, what does the prosecution do? There was so much discussion. Well, how's the prosecution going to arguably rehabilitate her testimony, right? The redirect was interesting because at one point she got emotional. You've talked before, Elizabeth, how she was quite calm and cool and composed. Talk to us about what happened on redirect and also the moment when she actually got emotional.
Yeah, and there were a couple emotional points that she had during her redirect testimony. The government kind of coming back to kind of refocus everything in, where they essentially asked Cassie, about having to do these freak-offs while she was having a UTI, something that may kind of play into the force, fraud, and coercion. Cassie's messaging Diddy saying, I want to see you, but I'm an emotional wreck. I don't want to do it. They brought those messages back. The government asked, did you review every single report from the government, especially when they were, especially when the defense was kind of talking about her recounting what she told the government in something in April or in something in 2023. And Cassie had said she didn't review all those reports from the government or federal agents. The government asked her about the affectionate messages, and that Cassie admitted, that Diddy was kind and loving, but it always just didn't last. Cassie said that when he wasn't happy anymore, that it just affected everyone. That she being Cassie was affected by Diddy's moods. They affected her entire life, her career, her self-worth. And that's when, when she starts talking about just kind of, I think, reflecting on her self-image of herself, especially around that time that she was with Diddy, that she does get super emotional. She said that her work essentially would take a back seat to having to do these freak-offs. The government asking, what all does a freak-off entail? She said physical prep, getting supplies, contacting the escorts. And she essentially said that she hung on to every single word that Diddy had said, because remember, she was, 19 years old, still a teenager when she and Diddy had met. And so she said she was asked about Diddy opening up her world, and she said that it was kind of chaotic. She just essentially wanted approval. And the government asked, well, who do you want to have sex with? And she essentially said, Sean and Sean only, this during their 11-year relationship period. The government brought back the defense exhibit of the 2009 messages. The defense kept bringing up the 2009 messages, but even again, you're thinking of the time frame. It's when Diddy and Cassie were first together, and so of course they're a lot more loving, a lot more nurturing in nature and that sort. And Diddy asked Cassie, "You're supposed to be seducing me," and Cassie said she kind of knew what this insinuated, that he just wanted to do a freak off. And so kind of when they were talking about the settlement and the financial situation, that's when she definitely started to get emotional, because during her cross-examination, she was talking about around the time that she had filed her lawsuit, she was actually going to be going on tour and going on tour in like Australia or New Zealand and that sort. And then she said she had canceled the tour, and they were essentially saying, oh, you canceled the tour because you got the financial payout. You didn't need to go on the tour anymore because your finances were already fixed. And then she said, no, she actually canceled the tour because she was overwhelmed after filing her civil claim. Again, that was settled a day after. She said that she was addressing the past and just didn't want to be away from her kids. And then the government asked, would you give all that money back if you never had to do a freak off? And that's when she started really getting emotional. She said that she just wanted agency and autonomy, because again, who wouldn't? I mean, it's your body, it's your choice. And then that the government was kind of honing in on the fact that Diddy was the one who initiated these freak offs, whether or not she was on her UTI, whether or not he was beating her during these sessions. She said that she didn't matter to Diddy, that she kind of felt like nothing. And she said that she admitted, yes, she was open at the beginning, but then that kind of changed over time. And I think that also kind of plays into the whole consent issue. She said that once she was done with Sean Combs, that she didn't do any more freak offs. And then she said that she had told Sean more than once that she didn't want to do these freak offs. She said that she had worried for her safety, for her career, and worried that he just didn't want to be with her anymore. And I think that's why she kind of kept doing this, essentially just to make him happy, something that she had been very forthcoming about. But I also think, there were points that the government really kind of honed in on the fact that this might play into, count 2 of the forced fraud and coercion of sex trafficking, where she was doing these things. She didn't want to be doing these things. She told her partner she didn't want to be doing these things. And yet, according to Cassie, this just became like a job for her. She felt like a sex worker, but that part got struck from the record.
And talking finances, by the way, it also came out that she got a settlement from the Intercontinental Hotel. I don't believe we knew about that.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised that the defense attorneys didn't bring this up during their cross-examination during the first time. They actually brought it up during recross. Now, there's been a lot of rumors and speculation, especially even prior to trial beginning, about how much Cassie received from Diddy in that settlement payout just for her federal lawsuit, right? So I think it was very much a moment where a lot of us were just like, whoa, she got a settlement also from the Intercontinental Hotel. And again, this was something that the defense, Ana Maria Acevedo, brought up literally right before she got off the witness stand, where she was asked, did you get a settlement from Intercontinental Hotel? Because she was asked, do you have any more pending lawsuits or any more demands that you had made out for money? And Cassie said that they did reach settlement negotiations very recently. She said about either last week or last month or so, and it was for $10 million. And I think what the defense was trying to do, again, kind of painted out that she was just her the reason for her wanting to do this was essentially for money or financial reasons. And I'm not sure how much of a sticking point that really was for jurors, but I was, again, kind of surprised that they didn't bring this up during the cross-examination. But maybe it was a point that this could be something that the jury just kind of left with, left with that impression of Cassie once she got off the witness stand.
I have a feeling that if the judge didn't impose the order that she had to finish up her testimony by the end of the week, this testimony would have gone well into Monday. But the judge wanted to make sure, she's pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
1 week down, make sure she leaves the stand, because there was so much more to get into. Now, she apparently was not the only witness who took the stand. There were 2 more witnesses who took the stand today. I got to talk about first this special agent. Who was this special agent? What did we learn from this special agent?
Oh, we learned a lot, Jesse, from Special Agent Yazine Binda from Homeland Security Investigation. She was questioned by AUSA Madison Smizer. At first, when she had taken the witness stand, I was kind of like, I'm wondering what she's going to testify, what she's going to talk about. She's coming after a very critical witness, and this special agent had a lot of very critical information. And so she was essentially somebody who had handled the arrest logistics of Diddy. The arrest happened just in this past September. And so we got a kind of inside look into what all was in the Park Hyatt Hotel right here in Manhattan. And so we saw a lot of exhibits, and a lot of notable exhibits, I will say that. And so the warrant was executed around 11:30 p.m. that day, and this happened on September 16th of 2024, a notable date. That's the date that Diddy got arrested. And so her role was essentially to be a photographer. So she photographed the entire hotel room. So we saw a bunch of exhibits. We saw exhibits of the room layout where you can see a bed, a TV window, a desk, a hallway closet. You saw a closer image of the bedroom and the bathroom closet. You saw the hallway closet. You saw a bag at the bottom of a closet. You saw a hard drive. You saw, more interesting, a Ziploc bag of, you may guess it, Jesse, baby oil and Astroglide, something that a lot of us were just like, whoa, because this is coming right after Cassie's testimony. Diddy's defense team is trying to paint him out as somebody who just kind of left the freak offs behind, left the drugs behind. But then you're seeing that as recently as just this past September, he had a bag full of baby oil, 5 bottles of it found in the bathtub, Astroglide in the lube in the bathtub. Then you see a nightstand. It had a Louis Vuitton bag, a Louis Vuitton med bag, something that Cassie had talked about during her testimony. And I think the government really did a great job in kind of presenting this after Cassie's testimony, because I think once we saw the baby oil, we were just like, whoa, because again, this was very recently. And so we saw clonazepam given to an alias, Frank Black, somebody that Cassie had talked about while she was on the witness stand. It was one of the aliases that Diddy had used when he was booking hotel rooms or getting escorts and that sort. What is clonazepam? I believe it's an ED medication. Then we see lube in the drawer of a nightstand. More baby oil is found. You see a nightstand with a red iPhone. That iPhone was seized as well as a phone that was on Christina Corum's person, another phone from the hotel, and the hard drive. You see a bottle of medications in that in these exhibits. You see a lighting device in the living room, and the special agent was describing it as mood lighting. Again, Cassie says during these freak-offs that the lights and the directions, this kind of played into it. So then you start to see a pink baggie. And it was interesting because the government said that this pink bag tested positive for MDMA and ketamine. And I think because it was in a pink bag, we kind of know that it possibly another thing, it's called pink cocaine. And so then they passed around this medicine bottle with the pink baggies around to the jury. And I will say, this is what I did see from the jurors, is a lot of them really overanalyzing it. A lot of them kind of looking into it, seeing what these little pink baggies are and stuff like that. Then you see a black fanny pack in one of the exhibits. And according to the special agent, that black fanny pack had $9,000 of cash in it. To me, I thought that was like, whoa, because again, if you're trying to paint it to be like that this was just a thing that they had done so long ago or anything like that, but this was as recently as just September 16th of last year, it was a lot kind of going on. So I was wondering how the cross-examination would go about this, especially because this seems really kind of damning in my opinion, because I think even when the baby oil was shown, a lot of people were just like, and I think, I couldn't see Diddy's face directly or anything like that when it was shown, but it was just kind of like, where's the defense going to kind of take this? And so what the defense did was essentially kind of harp on that this warrant talked about seized cash and bulk cash, and that wondering why the cash was taken and stuff like that. But I think that, given that these are federal agents who made this search, like really what other kind of questions could they ask to kind of poke holes in things beyond just, why did you guys seize the cash? Why did you seize the $9,000? And so I thought Special Agent Binda's testimony today was very compelling, and it very kind of much kind of verified a lot of Cassie's claims, especially when it comes to like habits that Diddy had, like keeping medicine in the Louis Vuitton bag, something that he had still did even while he was with Cassie. The baby oil, I know a lot of people talk about the baby oil, but the fact that there were so many bottles of baby oil in this hotel room that didn't look the biggest or anything like that from the pictures that we saw, but who knows, it might have been a humongous suite, but again, you know how photographs go. But I thought Special Agent Binda's testimony was very much like, whoa, okay. After they got Cassie off the stand, I see where the government did an excellent job of kind of making those connections there.
It looks like, I think a fair argument could be, even after all this time, right before his arrest, he might have been about to engage in a freak off. And so if you have the bottle, the baby oil, you got cash, freak off, you know, transportation to engage in prostitution, it just corroborates a lot of what was said. So I can understand why that's an important witness. And now we move on to the final witness of the day, who definitely did not finish her testimony today, will be back next week. So that now brings us to Dawn Richard. This is somebody that we thought was going to be the next witness. Huge witness. This is somebody who had filed their own lawsuit against Sean Combs, former member of Danity Kane. Took the stand in what, the last 15, 20 minutes of the day? Talk to us about what...
I'm still just trying to figure out, because it seemed like they laid down the foundation. While yes, it's true, like how you mentioned that she does have the right to change her mind and she does have the right to say no, how exactly just does the government prove that? Like, how do we know when she did say no, or how do we know when she did change her mind if they said that throughout the course of their relationship she kept saying yes?
They have to just put her testimony. I mean, I think her testimony saying that, but it seems to me that her testimony wasn't very, very clear. I think the prosecution may have missed the mark a little bit with the coercion to make it very clear. And that's why you're asking this question right now, which is a very good question. How are you going to get the jury to say, okay, there was coercion, and when did the coercion start and end? And that's going to be a jury question. And that is really why you need that cumulative of the next witness saying, yes, I was drugged. The drugging is a very big element, because if you're drugged, that really goes towards the coercion, because how did you consent, especially if you didn't know you were being drugged? And we also have her testimony about the fact that she was raped that last time. So that we have that situation, which does seem like a very clear divide, because she said she ended the relationship and she was meeting him one last time. And then there was this rape situation that had happened.
Right. And I think you bring up a good point there with the prosecution seemingly dropping the ball. I mean, the prosecution, they were the ones that handed the defense the text messages. How did they miss this? Or why didn't they bring it up, when they were first just introducing Cassie, or first had Cassie on the stand go around? Why wouldn't they kind of just field some of this out and explain it before, the defense questioned her?
I agree with you. I mean, one of the things that lawyers do, they have to turn over the text messages. They have to do that. It's part of their required discovery disclosures. But you are right. They should have lessened the blow by going ahead and front-ending it and saying, were these text messages, letting her explain them in context? Because now it seems the way it was presented, because they didn't disclose those on the front end, that they were trying to hide something, and now there's this smoking gun. And that really should have been done. They should have had her read some of those and say, yeah, and give some context and the ability to say, oh, yeah, but you don't know leading up. And she kind of got into this a little bit in her response, but leading up, you don't know what was going on ahead of time leading up to that, and why, for instance, maybe I was scared that he was going to, get angry. So I was saying these things to put him in a good mood, or whatever it may have been the reason.
What does the prosecution have to do to win this case?
Well, they really, I mean, there's a couple different claims. We have the RICO, but we also have, remember, the prostitution, the trafficking end of it. So if we have some testimony about a minor that's being trafficked across state lines, then he could serve some pretty long time in prison for that. So there's a couple different things that they're floating around. For him to go to prison and being convicted, it's not just that RICO claim that we have. We have the trafficking claim as well. And there's been a lot of testimony related to that trafficking claim about that they were bringing the people in. But, a lot of times she was also paying for those sex workers as well, meaning she was personally paying them. So there has to be testimony. Where was the money coming? Was it directed from him and all that, which gets into that enterprise.
The defense also brought up Sean Combs's drug addiction, right? And so they're trying to prove that, he wasn't this mastermind the prosecutor is painting him out to be. Rather, he was just suffering from, this addiction. Do you think they're doing a good job in proving that?
No, but it's early on in the trial. I think that they're going to, on their case, obviously put on that he had this drug problem. And so he didn't necessarily know or, wasn't orchestrating what was going on. I think that's going to be a hard sell. I think at one point they were tossing around that they were going to, do the defense of that, he was this individual and people wanted to take him down because he was successful. So they've tossed around a couple different theories here. I think from the testimony, he did have a drug problem. I don't think that anybody's going to dispute that. But the fact that you have a drug problem is not a defense to doing criminal acts.
Absolutely. Like having an alleged drug problem does not excuse rape or beating and assaults or any of that, correct?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. That's not a defense. You chose to take the drugs, whether you have a problem with it or not. That doesn't give you any right to go out and harm somebody else, rape somebody, like you said, or any other crime. That's not a defense. Now, would they at sentencing possibly take that into consideration in sentencing? Yeah, maybe they could take that at sentencing into consideration. But at this stage, that's not a consideration. I think that that's being floated to try to go at the RICO claim that it wasn't this organized enterprise that was doing this for the purpose of doing it. They're really trying to say that these are like consenting adults and that the issue that happened in the hotel and the allegations of abuse were domestic violence. Now, remember, domestic violence, is horrible as it is, he's probably would end up, even if they proved all of the claims, he's not going to serve substantial jail time or prison time for domestic violence. Unfortunately, looking at this, he probably should. But the reality is it's a totally different game than if he's convicted of other charges of what he's actually on trial for.
Now, we talked about that they're most likely going to put a psychologist on the stand. What other legal experts could we potentially see in this trial?
Well, the psychologist is probably going to be only, and they may not put the psychologist on the stand. That's only whether they think that and I don't know if there's a psychologist actually on the list, because really for the RICO, they don't need the psychologist. So the psychologist would only go if they feel like, say, and they're not going to be able to do it if they hadn't already disclosed it and it wasn't on the list to start with, but would go towards her reaction to counter those text messages. But remember, we've got all these other witnesses. It's cumulative because it's a pattern. It's multiple acts for racketeering. It's an enterprise for them doing it. So just because you have the witnesses that we've already heard, that we don't need to necessarily know their motive. I think they've put her on the stand first because A, she's pregnant and she could go into labor at any time, but B, because that was the one that, in my opinion, started all of this, her doing that civil case. And we have the video. We have that video of her in that hotel room, in the hotel, that's, very shocking to show that the actual physical abuse. We need that extortion factor. That extortion factor about him making the videos and then threatening to release the videos if they don't do what they want him to have done. That is a really key factor. So if we keep having people, he kept the videos and there's other text messages that he said, if I didn't do this, or I told somebody this, that he was going to release the videos, that they could get a conviction just from that.
Right. And then how many years could he get just from the extortion piece?
He could get a lot of years because the extortion is a part of the RICO. So that he could get a lot of years for that. But the life is the trafficking with the minors, that's the life. So there has been, and I am not sure, I've heard different, philosophies or theories or, leaked information as to whether the prosecution plans on putting on any evidence related to the trafficking of the minors. So I'm not sure that if they're going to do that or they're not going to do that, but we're going to see. But if there was trafficking of minors, he can get life in prison for trafficking of minors.
Absolutely. Well, this is just week 1, and we have 6, 7, maybe even 8 more weeks to go. So this is something that we will for sure be following. Alexis, thank you so much for coming on today.
Julie Grant, great to have you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Let's bring in attorney Renato Stabile to talk about this further. Renato, thanks for being with us. I wonder what you make of how the cross-examination went for the defense.
Look, I think it went about as well as it could have gone. They did what they needed to do in terms of confronting her with her text messages that undermine her claim that she was being coerced. But remember, the prosecution is going to clean a lot of that up right now on their redirect. They're going to go back over some of those text messages. They're not going to go through all of it. Remember, they said they're only going to spend about an hour, and everybody wants her to get off the stand by the end of today. But they're going to give her an opportunity now to explain why it is that at the same time that she's having these text exchanges that, some are loving and some of the things she did in terms of setting up these encounters, she was nevertheless being coerced.
How hard is that for a jury to be convinced of, the idea that because there are some times where she may seem like a willing participant, and then there are times where she has clearly said that she doesn't want to do it. How does a jury receive that sort of changing over time?
Look, I think the problem here really for the jury and for the defense is that, regardless, now look, the defense is going to say she wasn't coerced, but there's still been a lot of really ugly testimony. I mean, testimony about beatings and abuse and threats and all kinds of crazy things. And, you would have to believe that the jury can separate those horrific things out and accept that despite all of that, he technically is not a sex trafficker, which is what he's on trial for. That is extremely difficult for the jury, for any human being to do. So I think that's really the problem here for P. Diddy is, jurors being able to separate those two things, even though legally, technically, the defense, is going to try and make the point that it doesn't satisfy the elements of sex trafficking, but extremely tough.
Yeah, I mean, given some of the lurid details, you wonder how a jury is going to receive that sort of information. I do want to get your thoughts on how you think the prosecution is going to approach redirect. They're saying that it's going to last about an hour. What do you think will come of it?
Yeah, look, it's going to be very quick. They're only going to hit the high points where they think, the defense maybe scored some points. I think she's done quite a lot of damage here. It's pretty clear why they called her as one of their early witnesses, because the damage that's been inflicted, regardless of whether or not they make out the elements of the charge, but just the overall testimony of what they heard about him just is going to hang over the rest of this trial.
And I wonder, as we're looking ahead here, we're going to ultimately be hearing from one of her former friends. How do you think this is going to go?
Yeah, I think they're going to call one of her former friends to corroborate a lot of what she said. I mean, I think it's corroborated in the videos, it's corroborated in the text messages, but I think the former friend is going to corroborate that she didn't want to do these things, maybe that she confided in her as to her state of mind, that she felt she was being forced into these things. So they'll probably have some contemporaneous evidence of what she was going through while these things were happening, despite what is in the text messages.
All right, Renato, thank you so much for your insight. Renato Stabile, we appreciate it.